In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of American Black and White. Tonight, I will start the show with our Black History reflection before I introduce our guest. Tonight's reflection is on Barack Obama. Barack Obama's rise to the presidency was more than a political milestone. It was a cultural awakening. His leadership reminded the world that intellect, dignity, and hope are not just ideals, but tools for transformation. Obama embodied the audacity to believe that change is possible even when the world insists otherwise. His journey from community organizer to commander in chief symbolizes the power of preparation, purpose, and perseverance. For Black America, Obama's presidency was a mirror reflecting our brilliance, our resilience, and our rightful place in shaping the future of this nation. Tonight, we honor the legacy of Barack Obama. We also honor those who continue to build, uplift, and transform communities. Leaders like Kwame Carr, who embodied the same spirit of service, excellence, and unwavering belief in the potential of our people. So let me introduce our guest tonight. Welcome to another powerful episode of American Black and White, where truth meets testimony and where the stories of our people are honored with the depth they deserve. Tonight, we sit with a man whose journey reflects the very essence of Black excellence, a scholar, a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, an author, a content creator, and now a CEO shaping lives through purpose and spiritual awakening. Kwame Carr is not just an educator. He's an architect of transformation from the classrooms of Paul D. West Middle School to the superintendent's office overseeing district operations to the founding of Acrobatics LLC. His life has been a masterclass in leadership, resilience, and reinvention. His story is a reminder that when you commit to service, when you commit to growth, and when you commit to truth, the world opens doors you didn't even know existed. Tonight, we honor his journey, we honor his voice, and we honor the legacy that shaped him from his mother's influence to the timeless wisdom of Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. Let's dive deep and let's welcome Mr. Kwame Carr to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Charles.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing well. How about you?
I am just excellent. Thanks for being here. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we dive into the show?
I'll just say to you that is the best intro I've ever had in my life, sir. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. Uh, let's go first. Well, I'd like to start where I'd like to give our audience a chance to get to learn a little bit more about you, the person that you are. So, if you can tell us, who was Kwame Carr before the titles, the leadership roles, and the accolades?
A child at heart, I'll start there. And through my life, I found that I think we're all kind of trying to figure out who we are in the grand scheme of things. So I'm literally still figuring that out day to day. And I've realized for me personally, I've chosen paths that have been successful for me. But now in this stage of my life, I'm finding that maybe my path is something else. So I think we're ever evolving into different aspects of ourselves as we unravel the onion, if you will, and getting down to the core of that onion. And it takes a lifetime to do that. And the key for me has been to take those attributes that I had from a kid. Being very organized will be one of them. Being playful at heart will be another one. Not taking things so seriously all the time, remaining calm 99% of the time, and using those attributes to determine my next steps and what I wanted to do career-wise, how I wanted to present myself in the world, taking care of myself, being physically inclined to do running, for example. I walk a lot now, but I used to run. I still run the Peachtree Road Race every year. I have like 35 or so more T-shirts from that race over 35 years. So I'm kind of all over the place. It's kind of hard to narrow that question down, but just taking attributes from the talents that were given to me and placing myself in situations that allowed me to express my best self to the best of my ability, given the fact that I'm still a work in progress.
So tell us, how is it, and what's the secret to keeping that calm in some of those wild and out of control situations?
I just think for me, I go to my doctor's visits, and even as a kid, the doctor would listen to my heart rate, and it was always like 42 beats per minute, which is like 20 beats per minute less than the average. And they'll say, do you exercise and stuff? So I always played outside and all that kind of stuff. But I think the rhythm of my heart literally sounds strange. I'm not a scientist at all. But I think I think the rhythm of my heart as I was born allows me to stay calm. You know what I mean? It's just something that's innate. My nickname by several people in high school was Cool Breeze. I know where it came from, but I've just always been like that. It wasn't intentional, but it's helped me a lot.
So, did growing up teach you about the discipline, purpose, and identity? Well, teach you about discipline, purpose, and identity.
What did it teach me about discipline, purpose, and identity?
Mm-hmm.
Well, discipline-wise, I was raised in a disciplined household. Mother, my father would come and get me up on Saturday mornings and start playing this music real loud back from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and get me out of bed at like 7 a.m. And I'm trying to chill out, rake leaves, pick up sticks, that kind of stuff. And next thing you know, that turned into cutting grass for neighbors and just kind of earning my own money at an early age, even though I was still at the house, and keeping my room clean, getting my homework done. They never really had to stay on me about those types of things. So it kind of just carried over into my professional life. So discipline is very important in a lot of ways, in every aspect, actually. If we just break it down, you have to have discipline to accomplish your goals. What were the other two things? You said discipline?
Purpose and identity.
Purpose, like I said, purpose is ever evolving. I started as a professionally, and we'll probably get into a little bit later, but as a firefighter. So I dug into that purpose wholeheartedly for about 3 years, and then I realized that really wasn't my avenue. Then my purpose changed because my mother was always on my tail about being an educator when I was in college, and I didn't take any courses to be an educator, so I had to do that after the fact. But she turned out to be right as far as guiding me on how to go forward in my career, and it turned out very well for me. So at that point, that was my purpose for 27 years, and now, serving different purposes, I'm learning myself better and better. And that last thing again,
Identity.
Identity. That's changed. That's changed. I think about that all the time. As a kid, I was more, let's say, I was quiet. I've always been quiet. I'm an introvert by nature, so I'm very quiet. Not because I'm shy per se. I just like observing my surroundings more so than getting involved with being the person out loud. And so over time, my identity has shifted. When I became a principal, for example, people thought I was an extrovert, but I had to appear to be an extrovert because you can't lead, sitting back in the corner, being quiet and observing. You actually have to give some directives and some order and some lay down the discipline aspects for not only the students, but for how we're going to move as a unit, as a school, as the educators in general. And then identity now, as far as being outside of education, is shifting away from education, even though I do involve myself with the educational endeavors, is shifting more into self-discovery aspect, which is more so what my company revolves around.
So, how did Morehouse College shape your worldview and your understanding of Black male excellence?
Okay, short story before we get into that. I grew up Bill Cosby era when the Cosby Show was on. So my father was very much like Bill Cosby in that show when he would tell everybody, including his son, my son is going to Morehouse College. So that was my dad. And so I literally applied to one college, not knowing how competitive it actually is to get into the school. And I got in. My grades were very good, coming from Frederick Douglass High School in Atlanta, Georgia. And they were looking for students from the metro area, of course, to come into the school. And so once I got there, I found that I was surrounded by guys just like me from around the country, around the world, other countries, other continents. And it was very competitive. Gave me an opportunity to interact with them. It was a big time for self-discovery. I stayed on campus the first couple of years and just interacted with a lot of different people and learned their cultures. And they learned mine. They were involved in Atlanta, of course, because they were here. I did some light travel to some different places, but not a lot. But the expectation for excellence was very, very, very high. And not only did my father interest me in going there, but people like Benjamin E. Mays, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, who played a major role in Atlanta in not only politics, but in education at Morehouse College during that time when I was growing up. And then, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King is a graduate. And so when I look back at the trajectory of all of the people who have come from Morehouse College and are doing great things and have done great things, I thought it was a no-brainer for me to attend. So it still shapes my reality in a lot of ways now, because I still see and talk to and converse with a lot of graduates. We still keep in touch. I still do business transactions with them, and it's always good in the community. It gains a lot of respect from most people I encounter because they've had some run-ins with some people or know about Morehouse College. And so the standard of excellence is high, and it's really been a benefit for me, I can say.
So, what drew you to education after majoring in economics?
All right, going back to my mother, I was one of those lost souls, so to speak. When I graduated from Morehouse, I was working in a gymnasium down in Fulton County government. They had a gym for health for the employees. So I was a fitness trainer. So I was in great shape at that time, just training people on how to use equipment, machines and free weights and all that stuff. And it went from judges to police to fire department to everybody who really worked in Fulton County who wanted to work in that field. So I joined the fire department, and in 3 years of time, changed my mind about that. In the back of my mind, I always heard my mother's voice. You need to be a teacher. You need to be a teacher. You need to be a teacher. And I would always go to school with my mother from, I don't know, probably 7 years old, when I was able to stay out of her way and not be a burden during teacher work days. And I can remember the other kids of the kids of other parents who worked in the school, and we would all click up and get together, and we're still friends today. But I resisted probably until I was 26 years old being a teacher, but I was always mathematically inclined. Like I was one of those people who loved math, took AP calculus in high school and just zoomed through math. I almost got a perfect score on the SAT in math, came really, really close. And it just dawned on me, maybe I need to, because I was tutoring as well, tutoring math a little bit, very lightly though. So I started experimenting with substitute teaching, which by the way, was the hardest job I ever had. Like walking in cold, not knowing him, man, what? And so, yeah, the kids raked me over the coals, brother. They did, little fifth graders, I can remember. It was bad. but it taught me how to be stern and respectful and gain respect when I walked in my first year as a teacher. So I started teaching because of my mother. You know, I just listened to her and took a gamble, and it turned out to be the best thing ever because I taught in the classroom for 7 years with a high level of success teaching math, and it just turned out wonderfully.
Well, you know, with the principles that they use in the science of economics, were you using any of those practices whatsoever when you started to teach?
Great question. I'm thinking macro, I'm thinking micro. Not really. I can't think of anything. Something may come to me as we continue to converse, but I haven't really thought about that. That's a great question. As far as teaching is concerned, I guess the only thing that immediately comes to my mind, which was not part of the curriculum as a middle school math teacher, is just budgeting aspects and personal finance, but that's more of high school level stuff. So I didn't really get to use my econ knowledge at the high school level.
When you look back at 1998, your first year teaching, what stands out the most?
First semester. Ooh, woo. First semester, which is was August to December. And it was very much like the substitute job that I had. And I say that to say that the kids, they were challenging. They weren't disrespectful, just teaching is much more engaging if you're not planned out from start to finish every class and that time runs out and you're sitting there with 15 minutes left and you have 6 different preps. They could be the same prep, same class, but 6 different classes, which means 6 different sets of personalities and 30 kids per class, because that's what it was. Classes are a little bit smaller today, but it was 30 kids a class, basically. So I had like 180 kids every day. And boy, you talking about somebody who was tired at the end of the day, every day. So I would come home at 5 o'clock, get home, school got out about 3:30. I would get home about 5:30 and crash out. I'm talking about crashed all the way out. And I would not get back up till 5 in the morning. So I was like these 12-hour days, a lot of days I didn't even get to eat dinner because that's how tired I was. And I would get up the next day, do it again. So when December rolled around, I had to have a talk with myself during that winter break. And I was like, okay, this needs to change because I cannot survive another semester. Now, the people on the outside looking in, the principals, the counselors, they were saying, oh, Mr. Carr, you're having a fantastic year. You're doing so well, da. So they saw the structure, but man, it was beating me down. So I had to change my mentality. I had to gain a little better control of the classroom because saying, sit down, let me get your attention. Be quiet, please. All of that kind of stuff. Having to say that over and over again every day, and then try to get some lessons in between. No, you have to be a little more savvier, much more savvier than that. So I came up with these little tactics over time, changed my mindset in order to be effective in the classroom. So that was the most challenging part of all my career, that first semester.
So what did those early years in the classroom teach you about students, community, and yourself?
Ooh, students take a lot of blame for what adults have control of. And that rings true today, and I'll explain. Like today, we talk about how, I'll just use the word crazy, kids are and out of control, how out of control they are and disrespectful. But they're not the ones who created the atmosphere that they live in. They're not the ones who put the phone in their hand. They're not the one who puts the content on. They're not the ones who put the stuff on the TV. They're not the ones who play the stuff on the radio that they listen to. So the adults, it was slipped in on us, but we allow these decisions to be made, and voila, it's like, here we are. We try to figure out how the kids got here. They got here because of how we are today as a society. Like when I was growing up, there were certain things on TV, Schoolhouse Rock. You had the good cartoons on, with the lessons, and the TV shows were the same. But now it's not like that anymore. They have different stuff to listen to with all these ideologies, and they got a million ideologies instead of the core ones we had about the values and treating each other good and having respect towards each other and having the different personalities like the Jeffersons. Then you had All in the Family. Then you had Good Times, and you had Happy Days. And you had all of these different shows. Gomer Pyle. We can go down the list. Then on Saturdays you had the cartoons. Like I said, it was just a different time. So I think the kids take a beating, but the times have changed, and we, the adults, we've seen the change, we've allowed the change, and we are that change. And now we're kind of reaping what we sown, so to speak. Can't explain really how that happened, but a lot of it we had to see coming, because when the cell phones start being introduced in the schools, I was kind of concerned about. I wasn't kind of concerned. I was very concerned about that, because I already knew what was about to happen. A lot of off-task behavior. Because who doesn't want to scroll? Pick up their phone and get a quick scroll in. It's a beautiful thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so, that part about the kids. I tend to get lost in the first part of the question, sir. So you got to add that second part.
That is the same thing, alluding to the community and yourself.
Okay. So the community, what was the first part then? Because you asked me. Go ahead.
So what did those early years in the classroom
teach me? Okay, yeah.
The community and yourself.
Okay, so the early years in the classroom, as far as the kids are capable. We just have to get their attention, because attention is the currency these days. And it's very evident based on things we are seeing and participating in. So if we can't get the kids' attention, we're not going to be successful in what we're doing. So for me, I was able to do that because of the respect level and because of the demands I put on them. I kept them busy all the time and just had their best interests at heart. And I was able to relate to the students on a day-to-day basis. And so you look like you're about to say something.
No, I was just listening because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Okay. Yeah. And so the kids, they can be difficult, but you have to have that mindset that you're going to succeed. It has to be something that's predetermined when you go in there. And I think that goes for everything. For myself, when I took the job at every level, there's a certain level of predetermination that goes into any of these decisions. Because if you're going to accept a role, and all the roles come with the job description, of course, but even greater than that job description is performing the task to the highest levels possible. And so I was able to get my kids to do that and remove the excuses. Now, they always came to me a little bit behind, and I'm not placing blame on those who had them prior to me, but we always made more than 1 year gains. It was not an exception to make 2, 3, sometimes 4 year gains in my classroom in mathematics based on the assessments that were given every year on the test. But that mentality and the narrative of being a Title I, because I've always worked Title I positions, Title I schools, the narrative that comes with that becomes a mindset and an expectation that students can't perform to a certain level or that they are going to come behind, or that they have a bad family upbringing, or woe is me, you know, all that kind of stuff plays in adults' minds. And now we've created a situation where we are making excuses for kids instead of getting the job done. And so that type of mindset for me, I wasn't going to become a teacher if I wasn't going to be successful. You know, why do that just to go try to get a paycheck? That was not my goal. My goal was to come in and be a difference, set an example. Because after all, if me being a black, and I worked in black schools primarily, and then Hispanics toward the end of my career. But if I can't come in being a full-grown man, I'm not disparaging anybody else, but if I can't come in and be a full-grown man in my schools and my community and have success, then how can I expect anybody else to do it? I mean, I can expect them to do it because they are grown and they took the contract. But if I can't do it, what do I look like making excuses, saying that I can't do it? Then we out of here then, you know what I mean? So that's always been my thing. I'm not going to be a failure in my own community, which I was in my own community at Paul D. West growing up in that area about 2 miles away. I know I deviated from your question, but I think I answered some of it.
Well, so, but in that situation where you were saying about, you know, what the expectation was of the schools and the students with the status of the school in general, how did you change the kids' mentality to not think about, you know, folk putting them in situations that make them seem like they're less than? What did you do to change that mind process?
You ever seen those videos online where, again, I'm not disparaging anyone, but you ever seen those videos online where the kids and the mom is trying to tell them to do something?
Yep.
And then the daddy comes in and said, "Boy, sit down." Bro, it's just like that. It's just like that. Not that I had to yell that out, but I'm saying the level of respect that you get just from appearing in nature, it brings a certain level of clarity to kids. Maybe it's the bass in the voice. Could have been the ball. I was ball back then in 1998. You know, imagine that. I see you still got yours. But yeah, just being a black male, I ain't gonna lie, it helps. It helps a lot.
But you know, I'll tell you, you know, I've had an enormous amount of black male educators on the show. And I have to say that each and every last one of them, including yourself, you know, have all come up with creative ways to be successful in classrooms. And some of the most recent ones, you know, they're still creating ways where they're actually expanding education that's really doing major contributions to our communities, you know, which we all would hope would happen despite the shortcomings, because those shortcomings you mentioned are real. So, in situations like that, what are some of the creative processes that you have used that really improved your students and made them feel better about coming to class?
I work my students to death. You know, I spent time, I did. I spent time, I wish I had pictures, but you know, they're old Polaroids now. Everything is digital. But when I was teaching, we didn't have whiteboards and we couldn't type, and stuff just projects on the screen. We had the dry erase boards, and we had chalkboards even still, but dry erase boards, and we had the overhead projector and bulletin board paper. You know, that's how much times have changed. But what that enabled me to do, before I would leave, I would prepare every night before I left. So I would have these math problems and I would spiral my instructions. So whatever we went over, I would hit that, and then I would interject some new concepts into the problems for the next day. So it was nothing for the kids, long story short, to come to my classroom and have 75 math problems on the board, written out in long form. And when I say long form, they're typically in sentence structure or word problems, because that's what they were going to see on the assessment. And just being able to accomplish that at the kid level, to come in, get busy, accomplish those problems, put it in a notebook, because I required them to have a notebook. And notebooks at the end of the year in my class, they end up being literally that thick, because we would have notebook checks. I would give open notebook tests, and that would help them to keep up with their notes instead of leaving them under the desk or whatever. Open notes, and they knew it. And so they would keep their notes, and I would put those tests on the wall. They got 100. Everybody who got 100 had their paper posted on the wall. There was one test I had like 50 100s just plastered all over the wall in the room on display, and they like to see their papers on display at the end of the week. I was traditional, I gave that test on Friday. They say that's not a good idea. You don't need to do it on Friday, but Friday was my day, man. And I would go home on the weekends, grade them, and the Monday when they walked in, I would have those papers on the wall. But the fact that I worked them to death, and at the end of each class, we would go over every problem. We'd just popcorn around the room, and I'll make sure I got everybody involved. And if I knew a kid didn't know it all, but I knew this kid who wasn't mathematically inclined knew this particular one, or sometimes I'd tell the kid in the hallway, look, I'm gonna call on you today. I need you to be ready for this problem right here. If you need help solving it, let me know. And then, so we would work the problem. And then when I got to that number, I would call on that kid for that number so they could speak out loud and get their confidence up. So everybody participated, and everybody felt challenged, and everybody kept a notebook. And that's how I got everyone involved, just by having those personal relationships and involving everyone and challenging them the whole time and making them love math. People don't really like math these days.
So how did your mother influence your character, your work ethic, and your spiritual grounding?
Okay, my work ethic, let's start with character. I'm probably more like my mother than I am my father. My mother, very kind-hearted, not that my father wasn't, but I told you he was like a military guy, kind of like a drill sergeant. So I don't want to cross him too much. My father, we bonded later in life, but she basically raised me as a kid to be kind-hearted and to be expressive and to be a team player, and also no hate in the heart, forgiving, understanding, but still a strong sense of being Black and prideful about that. She wore an afro until maybe 2000, at least to 2000. She wore an afro, like from the 60s to 2000. So I had that mama, and so yeah, she shaped my character in that way. Okay. And then as far as the second part, what was the second one after character?
That's your work ethic,
okay,
and your spiritual grounding.
So the work ethic piece, just seeing her go to work every day. Father too, get up and leave the house, and just my father was more so on the weekends with me. He kept me working, and I eventually ended up working for him because he was a hands-on guy. He did home repair and decorating, so I did some heavy lifting with him, including doing work with the jackhammer and painting and stripping floors and that kind of stuff. So that was on the weekends and the summers, and then just watching my mom get up and get to it every day and her crafts on a regular schedule just taught me a lot of work ethic. And then just coming home and getting to my homework and that kind of stuff regularly without needing to be prodded, especially in high school. I took pride in getting my work done and getting it done on my own and getting those A's and B's. And because I went to the school where my mother taught high school, because she was a home ec teacher. So I didn't need them going down there, man, and telling her that I didn't get my work done. So that kind of played into it. And as far as spirituality, I was fortunate because I had a lot of different spiritual experiences, not only in the church. When I was younger, I was in a youth organization with my friends who we're still friends today. And we grew up together in the same neighborhood in East Point. And we were in this organization called the Episcopal Youth Council, or EYC, headed by this lady named Miss Sis Trump. But that pretty much started us early off. But then my dad took me to different places as well. So we would go to the different denominations of Christian churches. We would go to the Muslim church. We would go to the Catholic church. We went to maybe a Buddhist temple or something like that. We just went to different places and just exposed me to a lot. But my mother, she maintained her solid faith all the way through her life. And she got more active as she left education and retired. But I've always had a spiritual background in my home where we were always giving praise.
So, what is one lesson from your childhood that still guides you today?
One lesson from childhood that still guides me today. Just find out who you are and maximize your talents to the best of your ability, and don't be afraid to shine. I'm still learning that lesson. Still learning that lesson. Yeah.
So, looks like we got something here in the chat. Um, um, okay, somebody was waving. I guess I don't know what that means. Okay. Well, let me go over. Let's transition over to, your work as an educator. The teacher, principal, and superintendent work. Um, what was the moment you knew teaching was more than a job and that it was a mission?
Yeah, that was day one. It was day one. It was very satisfactory. And then as the days moved on, more and more challenging, because you're not only performing the duties of teaching, you're performing other duties as required. And you're also a part of the community because you're dealing with the parents. And one of my practices was to contact parents prior to the year beginning. So out of the 180 that I had my first year, I probably was able to contact 130 of them by phone to introduce myself. I didn't do that every year because that is a tall order, but that's something that I did maintain at least the first 2 or 3 years, which enabled me to have a very high level of success in the classroom.
So, how did you achieve such phenomenal student achievement results early in your career?
I had these other teachers that I guess we were all in secret competition. I hope none of them are on this live right now, but but we were in a tough school. We were in that struggling school, and one of the reasons the principal hired me, he thought I had a quiet strength about myself, and so a healthy competition, because I didn't know one way or another. I'm coming in fresh, and I didn't know anything from anything. All I knew was to go in and teach my heart out and do the best that I could. But when the results came out that very first year that I taught, they were kind of looking up at my scores like, wow, this guy's for real, And so that began, I guess, a healthy competition all the way through the teaching process, because once I set a bar at one level, I knew I couldn't go below that again. So then it became a competition with myself, because my numbers I didn't want to have a year of decline, if that makes sense. I always set the bar. Once I set the bar for myself, even though it was competitive with everyone else, the bar had to be raised each time, at least a 5 to 10 percentage points higher than the last time. because of the improvement in my own craft. So I kept the heat on myself, even though there was an unspoken competition, I suppose.
So, what did it feel like to have your teaching practices used for countywide professional development?
Yeah, that was awesome. We had a what was called, the name will come to me in a minute, but because of my results and a couple of other people as well, they studied our results at the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade levels. 2 of us being math teachers. I was the 8th grade teacher. We had a 7th grade teacher and a 6th grade teacher. It was a female, a male, and a male, myself. And we were receiving phenomenal results. One was a language arts teacher. I think I said that. But the results were consistent year after year after year. And so the principal took notice of that after the 3rd year or so. And they decided to do professional development around the practices that we were doing. And so we had to journal each day to ourselves what we did to make ourselves effective. It was a self-discovery type of deal because we couldn't answer the question. They asked us the same question you just asked, and we couldn't answer it because it's just something that we did naturally. So we kind of worked through the process of discovering ourselves and what our practices were to uncover that. And then that turned into a video series for the county and interviews of the students. And that became professional development at the county level. And it became an article and just kind of ballooned after that. And it actually turned into a presentation that we took to Title I schools. And we went to, I think we went to California that year, San Francisco, maybe. That's as far as we got. Well, we did the presentation, not only in Fulton County, but around the country on a small level.
So, as an instructional math coach, what strategies did you find most transformative?
You're going to be amazed. You're going to be amazed, Brother King. But I was a middle school math teacher. So my assistant principal, when I was in the middle school, she became a principal, Miss Juanita Nelson, and she became a principal of an elementary school. And when I was ready to transition out of the classroom, she hired me as her math coach. And what I noticed was teaching pre-algebra at the middle school level, the kids that I did not have to go back and teach timetables to, they were the most successful. They were absolutely the most successful because I didn't have to go back and teach timetables, because if you don't know your timetables, you're not going to divide. You can't do it. So if I say 12 divided by 3, you're not going to reverse that and just come up with the 4, you know what I mean? And if you can't divide, now you can't do fractions because fractions are just division, right? If you can't do fractions and division, now you can't do percents. I mean, it goes downhill. Now you can't do proportions, you know what I mean? And so it just falls down after multiplication. And the multiplication, most of the kids didn't understand it's just a shortcut to addition. It just saves you time. It's kind of like looking at the sight words that you learn in elementary school, that they tell you need to know these words because the reading is comprised about 80% of the words that you read are these words right here, the, he, she, all those words like that. You got to memorize them. You got to know them. You got to know them. And nobody has a problem with that. But when you say you got to memorize your timetables for some reason, it becomes a big problem. But that's also the foundation after addition, because it's the shortcut, just like those sight words, or Dolch words. They're like 220 of them, where there are even less timetables. And you learn those in 2nd grade as arrays, and the arrays become your formal timetables in the 3rd grade. And by the 4th grade, when you're doing double digit or triple digit multiplication, if you can't do that, it's basically over. So to answer your question, in elementary school, that was the focus, because the teachers did not necessarily have time written in the curriculum from the state. They might have 2 weeks on timetables. I'm sure it's probably still the same now, but this is like 2005, 6, and 7, around that time frame. They just didn't have time in the curriculum for kids to learn timetables. So if there are parents on here, got to get those flashcards and they got to know their timetables, parents. That's how I learned them, and they just stuck with me ever since. But anyway, so I worked with teachers on timetables. And the way I did that was through competition. So during the math classes on certain days of the month, we would have third grade versus third grade classes, fourth grade versus fourth grade classes, fifth grade versus fifth grade classes. And we would have a multiplication contest. And the contest was very simple. I had a PowerPoint. The problem will come on the screen, 2s through 12s. And whoever hit the buzzer first, like the Family Feud, whoever hit the buzzer first and got the answer, that's who wins. And then the class that won, we whittle it down, have a competition, see who's the third grade champion. That's a pizza party. So we had like 3 pizza parties for third, fourth, and fifth grade. 3 pizza parties for the champions of the multiplication table contest. So to answer your question, timetables was the factor.
So what were the biggest challenges transitioning from teacher to assistant principal?
There could be 2 different challenges because it can happen in 2 different ways. Sometimes you get transitioned into an assistant principalship within your same school. Now, when that happens, it didn't happen to me, but when that happens, your role as a teacher becomes different. And the teachers see you a certain way. You're buddy with this person, but now you might be their evaluator. So that changes the whole dynamic. And people may look at you like you've changed or you're being difficult now or whatever, because now you're Mr. or Miss assistant principal, you know what I mean? So that could be a problem. I didn't have that problem. My issue, toughest thing, was transitioning districts. So when I left the math coaching position, I went to work with another assistant principal who had become a principal in another district, but used to be my supervisor at Paul D. West. And so I left to go to a totally different district that I was not accustomed with to engage in a brand new school, mind you, that this school had just been built, never opened. We were opening the school on day 1. And so not only was I a new assistant principal, we were at a brand new school that had never existed prior to. So the challenge in that is molding the community around the new leadership with a rookie principal and a rookie assistant principal being myself, coming up with the rules and regulations on how we're going to operate inside the school system and just getting to know the community in general and forging a culture that is conducive for learning. Very, very challenging year.
So how did your leadership philosophy evolve as you moved into administration?
I've always considered myself self-governing when I was in the classroom. I would like to think, and I've actually said this out loud before, that I really didn't need administrators when I was in the classroom because I didn't write a lot of kids up, and I wrote 1 kid up in 7 years of teaching. And all I needed them for, give me a good evaluation, of course, because I was going to get my scores, just to open the door and close the door. But when you become an assistant principal, everyone doesn't have that mentality, and some people may not have that capacity, just depending on where they're coming from or where they are in their career at that time. And so the leadership has to be comprehensive in the fact that you have to be able to reach people where they are and be that helping hand and give that advice or resources to those that need it, and being able to identify them while maintaining a respectful relationship without burning bridges or causing any major friction, but at the same time having the capacity to levy a heavy hand when needed. Because sometimes, adults will, especially the veterans who have been there, and, I don't know anything because I'm just a little, young buck, wet behind the ears still on the baby bottle. And so who are you to tell me kind of thing. So just being able to go in and have reassurance within yourself and being fortified enough to handle those difficult situations and conversations respectfully, and being able to show that I too have a high level of intellect and common sense. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Turner Middle School was on the state's needs improvement list. What was your turnaround strategy?
The turnaround strategy was to go in and prove everybody wrong. Prove everybody wrong. When I left Banneker High School, which was one of the tougher schools in Fulton County, South Fulton County at the time, I was going to a middle school to be principal at Turner Middle School. And I would hear things about Turner. Oh, Turner's so rough. You're gonna you're gonna have such a hard time, and blah 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 this and blah 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 that. But so happens when I was applying for the job, I also went there to visit as a visitor, plain clothes, jeans, with a visitor's badge on. Some people figured out what I was doing, but most people didn't. And I just kind of meandered around the hall like a parent would. Act like I had a destination. A couple people would stop me and say, "Hey, can I help you?" I said, "No, I know where I'm going," that kind of thing. But I was just observing the classes during transition and the interactions with the kids during the transition of classes and in the cafeteria while they were eating. And I knew then, man, I said, man, this is going to be a cakewalk right here compared to where I'm coming from. Right. I'm gonna have to wind this thing down. I'm gonna have to curtail, who I've been the last 3 years, so they don't think I'm absolutely out my rocker, coming to this environment. I mean, those kids were they were so nice and polite and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just amazing how you can, different people measure different things different ways, because everybody hadn't seen, and I'm sure me too, I hadn't seen the worst of the worst, but I've been in some tough situations. I know that, and some tough schools in the Metro Atlanta area. And I've attended, some of the tougher schools as a student. And I just knew, man, what was going to happen when I went there. So I already had a mindset that we were going to get it done walking in the door. So the hardest thing was to convincing the adults that, hey, this isn't that bad. And over time, short time, the first year the teachers caught on, they bought in. First thing I did was change the motto of the school to "We're the best middle school in Georgia." And then everybody started stealing my motto, man. It was like going around the county. But yeah, we're the best middle school in Georgia. I kept that out on the marquee the entire time I was there. And I would put it on the letterhead every time I spoke during programs. And I would have this call out every Sunday at 8:00. I will record this call out to the parents. Like for 5 minutes, I would talk about what's going on in the school, what's coming up, what I need the parents to pay attention to. So that almost became like a little mini church in itself. Parents would say, yeah, we congregate around the phone at 8:00. So we know your phone call is going to come up, call out, and make this blast. So it was hard work. It was hard work for sure. But it wasn't like it could have been,
So as you think about that, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement you can offer to educators, administrators that are in that situation where they're going to schools just like you did and you helped to turn around? What are some words of encouragement and wisdom you can give them and how to stand strong in those situations?
Yeah, you have to know what you're signing up for. You got to know what you're signing up for. A lot of times, well, I can't speak for people, but what I think I have observed is people seek the position, we all want to rise up and get some clout, you know what I mean? But you have to be a good fit And once you get into the position, you have to understand where you are. You have to understand your staff, especially, and understand your community and what you're signing up for. And once you get in, before you get in, you have to have that mindset that you're going to be successful. If you're doubting that your success is coming in any shape, form, or fashion, then your life is going to follow your own expectations for yourself. Now, you're going to have hard days. Things are going to come sideways. Things are going to blindside you. But the ultimate goal has to be success in your own mind. And if you have things that you know aren't going to work, you need to have the nerve and the fortitude to go ahead and change it. Quick story. So the first day I got there, during dismissal, all the teachers would send the students to the cafeteria to be dismissed from the cafeteria. Can you imagine, like, 750 kids in the cafeteria, some of them standing up? Now the cafeteria might hold 500. So you got 250 people just kind of in between the aisles and all that kind of thing, right? That was the rest, and they've been doing that for years. That was a recipe for a disaster, because if people missed their bus, they were missing their bus, they couldn't hear. You calling buses out, people can't hear the bus. Now you got buses coming back. I'm like, man, that's too much confusion every day. And then you don't know who's mad at who. The fight might break out. You get the pushing and shoving, and then, oh man. So I had a decision to make. I was like, after 3 days of that, man, I was up at 3 a.m, like typing an email. Like, this is how we're gonna dismiss. I learned this from a former principal of mine at Banneker High School, as a matter of fact, Mr. Bradley. We're gonna dismiss from the classroom. So we started calling those buses while the kids remained in their last period class, and just let them trickle out, And as the bus pulled out, we called the bus. As the bus pulled up, we called the bus. And they just trickled out. Man, it was so beautiful. But I had to have the nerve to change what had been done for probably 10 years. And the reason that was a big deal is because teachers were used to letting their kids go at 3:30. This ain't my problem no more. This the assistant principal and the principal and the counselor's problem now, because I'm gonna let these kids go down the hall at 3:30. And I'm like, no, you ain't gonna put all this on us. We're in this together. So we got to wait here till 4 o'clock to that last bus, because at the fine print at the bottom of the bell schedule says, until all students are safely dismissed. There's some terminology at the bottom, and I would point that out. The fine print that nobody wants to read, I point out that small print that comes from the county. Once all students are dismissed, that's when teachers were dismissed. So I blew that up to show the staff, no, we all in this together, and we dismissed from the classroom and solve that problem. That's one instance out of 1,000 little things. You have to be able to make those changes immediately and stand on that without worrying what everybody's going to say. You got to have some tough skin,
Let's transition over to your work as an entrepreneur and you being the CEO of Acrobatics LLC. What inspired you to launch Acrobatics LLC after retiring from public education?
Okay, I'm probably on my fourth iteration of Acrobatics, right? So when I was a teacher still, I had a storefront called Acrobatics Algebra Institute, and it was strictly tutoring. It wasn't on the scale of a Kumon or anything like that, or a mathnasium, but it was a local tutoring operation where I just tutored kids in math, and I did most of it. And I had some help from the AU Center. I would hire kids from down there to come and assist me. And after a while, it became too daunting to do that while I was in the classroom and tutoring every night. It just became too much. So that ended up closing after about 3 years, because I wasn't ready to leave the classroom and I wasn't ready to go full time with Acrobatics. And then after that, it turned into just math presentations. And And so now, math presentations and tutoring, I should say, tutoring from the home. So I continued it on a smaller scale, not a storefront, not on anybody rent and all that kind of stuff. And then it turned into the presentations and just, and I still do some of that around math primarily, sometimes around education. And now it's kind of morphed into an idea of, and it's still being formed, but it's morphed into the idea of taking whatever crafts you have, like you would be a podcaster. I would be an educator, and I'm kind of in my own process of discovering who I am, like literally. But just taking those skills that you have innately and figuring out what it is we're supposed to be doing in life and serving purpose beyond the profession. Like, who are we beyond what we do to make money? And is there a way ultimately to make the same said money in our passion, and employing that? Now, I'm still in the process of doing that, but that's kind of where acrobatics is going now. Just being self-aware, and enjoying the talents given to us by what I call the Most High, and employing those talents to the best of their ability, and hopefully for means to sustain ourselves without having to necessarily engage in the traditional 9 to 5, if you will.
So, how did you develop the mission of spiritual liberation, self-love, and self-discovery?
That just came over time, and that's not that old that I wrote that. Maybe 3 years ago. It hadn't been that long. That's the space I was in. Once I left education, I was literally asking myself, like, what next? I had these plans to resurrect the Acuratics Algebra Institute and to do this storefront. I was way down that road. I actually had a sign out, coming soon. I had a building picked out. I'd already gotten into an agreement. Fortunately, not a written agreement, but a handshake. But the place was ready, man. We was ready to rock and roll. And then I said to myself, do I really want to put myself in a space where I'm owing someone rent every year, every month, and then having to rely on people to show up? Because that tutoring game it ain't always easy, because people will say, hey, I can't make it today. You done already prepped, and you done made your plans around that, and or you tutoring 4 people in a row, and then the 5th one say, I ain't gonna be able to make it, and then the 6th one say, oh, I'll be there, and the 7th one like, oh, I ain't gonna be able to make it. Now you got all these gaps in your time, man. I'm like, man, I ain't finna be doing that. So I pulled back on all that, and as a result of just getting still and listening to myself, because I do a lot of walking, I'm all in the woods and stuff, and I just started hearing, like, figure out your mission, figure out your purpose. And then I just started writing this stuff down. I've always been a writer and just writing things. And that just came over time, and I just tweak it and tweak it. Heck, it might change tomorrow after I talk to you, Mr. King. You know what I'm saying? you might go online and see something different. It'll be basically the same, but after our conversation, it may tweak a little bit. I'm still working on it.
And I remember when it was a while ago that we actually booked you for the show, and just thinking now, and when I listened to your conversation then when we were chatting on the phone, because we chatted for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm listening to you now, let me tell you, I'm hearing your whole entire mission, but what I'm hearing also is that there were some times in between that you had some doubts, or you didn't know if you wanted to really go all the way through with this plan. Can you tell us what actually transpired that maybe put those stop gaps in between you actually going full-fledged with acrobatics?
This is going to sound weird, Mr. King. But I got to go way back before I did any of the math stuff, before I did anything with acrobatics. I was literally in my bed one morning, and out of nowhere, I was awake. I wasn't asleep. I heard a whisper in my ear. And you know what that whisper said?
What did it say?
It said, acrobatics. That's what it, like, literally, just like that. Literally. And
You got the
so I
whisper.
took the math and the speaking engagements and everything and poured it all into the acrobatics. But I've come to realize that really wasn't the fit. But what I'm doing now is more of a fit. It just feels right. The mission feels right. The vision feels right. And what I'm doing just feels like it fits and accurate. Even the name speaks to it. Like being who you are, discovering who you are, accuracy, acrobatics. It just feels right. Now, I'm way past the whisper in my voice. It's just taking me a long time to unravel what it is. So that's where it comes from.
Mhm.
You know?
So, what does creative independent contractor mean in the context of your work?
It means allowing circumstances to unfold, like you and I are having this discussion now
Mhm.
and conversing, and I'm on the CZ King podcast right now. So that's nothing that I could have manufactured myself. It just came along naturally from something that was created through the vision that I'm walking with acrobatics at this time. And so just allowing things to unfold naturally without getting in the way of the process is really been the goal and is the goal as I figure out it's a lot of faith based movement in this business for me. As I look at my business, there's a lot of and I guess it would be anybody who endeavors to operate in business. You know, that takes a lot of faith. But I'm not actively seeking like anything right now. I'm like literally an open vessel, and the opportunities that align, those are the ones that I take. If I think it does not align, then I'm more inclined not to get involved. Like I've written several books, and you know, people will call me and say, "Hey, we'll advertise your books for you for a good old fee of $2,000." You know what I'm saying? I'm like, dude, what are you talking about right now? I'm like, all right, like I already did the work. Now I did the work. Like, so why don't you, you know, I can cut a deal with you if you want to go advertise and you sell X amount of books, and I can give you some percentage points off of that. You know, speaking dollars and cents. But don't try to hit me over the head for a promise that you can't, you know. So yeah, so I don't take those opportunities, Brother King. But you know, stuff like this comes along, or another speaking engagement comes along, or a conference comes along that's paid. You know, I take those, and because I was able to retire from education a little bit early. And I say a little bit early because I never going into education, it was not my goal to be assistant principal or math coach or assistant superintendent or curriculum director or any of that. That wasn't my plan. Obviously, I was going to go in, teach math for 30 years, get my retirement. But, you know, things start moving and shaking, and I moved up the ladder relatively quickly. And then, so, you know, that means your salary schedule goes up in education, which means the money I thought I was going to be making, I was already making plus some. So I could leave a little early, take a little hit for the early retirement penalty, whatever. But it was still, you know, it was beautiful for me. So that allowed me to get out and experiment and do this work here. So like I'm not in a big rush to define exactly what it is that I'm doing. I'm kind of letting it define itself over time.
So, I will say this before I move to the next area. You definitely, I'm just feeling that you're more of a creative spirit than you give yourself credit for.
Okay.
Because the vibe has to be right each and every time. So every time you went out to create, not just your books, but other things that you've done, the vibe had to have been right. So when you turn it off, how does it feel when you turn it off? Because it sounds like at some point there's some things that you still miss, but you do them probably in other ways.
When you say turn it off, what do you mean? The creativity?
Yeah, yeah. It's like you turn it off where you say, okay, well, this is it. I'm not feeling this right now, so I'm just gonna let this go. So when you turn it off and you come back in a different way to make this same approach, does it feel like that you've missed anything?
No, no. They got a saying. They got a whole saying about that.
Mhm.
About process. What's the saying? Trust the process.
You're right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I'm learning to trust the process. Now I was skeptical about, when I was doing what I was doing most recently in my occupation. Like trust the process. I don't want to hear that. Trust, stress.
So
Stress,
you're not
but
gonna let yourself
yeah,
be stressed.
I can trust the process a little bit better now because I have the space, and I
Mhm.
know I'm working on my thing, so I'm able to trust the process a little bit better. So it doesn't perturb me at all because I don't have to wait. It's not a long wait,
Right.
relatively speaking. It's not a long wait.
Yeah.
Because it's just been 3 years. I'm still kind of defining it. Like I spent the first 53 years doing what? So 3 year wait ain't nothing,
Mhm.
relatively speaking.
So let's move over to your work here as a content creator, and let's talk a little bit about your podcast.
Okay.
So can you tell us what inspired the Rain Man Shaman show?
So at home, uh, let's go back further. So I started when I left education. I wasn't physically where I wanted to be. As I mentioned earlier, I used to be a fitness trainer um, in Fulton County in a gymnasium, and I did that for probably 8 years. I was at Morehouse, and I did that for about 8 years until I started teaching, basically. And so I was in pretty good doggone shape. And so one of the things that I had to do because of my numbers, how you go to the doctor and they give you that little printout. They
Mhm.
gave me my little printout. I was like, oh no, we can't be doing this right here. So I needed to engage in some stuff that was going to help me that I could do consistently. So I just started walking. Now I walk every day. I have a few trails, and I like to be out in nature anyway. I was always a nature boy, all in the creeks and stuff as a little kid and all that kind of stuff. So I started walking maybe a year into it. I was never been a social media person. I had LinkedIn for professional reasons. Facebook, I had that for a little while and I got off. I've been off Facebook for like 12 years. I just recently got on maybe 3, 4 weeks ago. Like that's how long I've been on Facebook. About 3 or 4 weeks. But I wasn't on TikTok or Twitter or YouTube or any of that stuff, not majorly. I would post some things like the videos of the interviews they did for me at school when I was a principal, Georgia Public Broadcasting. Did a couple videos, so I put that on YouTube and stuff like that. That was educationally based. But as far as Rain Man Shaman, I was just walking one day and just reflecting on teaching, and a little voice in my head said, "Why don't you record that thought?" You know. So I recorded a little something. It was around education, and it just became a habit of recording. And then the little voice said, "Why don't you go and upload that?" And so I started up. I started uploading little pieces here and there. It'd be 2 months. I upload, and then it'd be 3, 4 months before I upload something else. Cause the ego thing. You wasn't getting no hits, and when nobody watching my stuff, I was like, ain't nobody watching my stuff, man. And so I wasn't uploading too much, and then it just became a pattern after time. And then as I started to get better at it, I leaned towards TikTok because of the ease of the upload. They're all pretty easy, but I found TikTok to be really, really easy at that time. And I just got better and better, more comfortable. I had to get over my fear of being seen like that, because I wasn't, like I said, I'm an introvert by nature, but I can get on here and talk on an interview. I can talk, but to talk for an hour, 2 hours, probably not. Because like now, let me drink some. I got my cup too, man.
Well, I think I'm feeling you. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah. So as I got more and more comfortable on the screen, that was one of my goals. That was one of my secret goals. If I can just get past the fear of what other people are gonna say with me talking on the screen, what are they saying? I wonder what they think. Da 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 da. And now it don't even matter. What I'm saying? I'll say about anything on there, still being respectful as I can be. Sometimes I probably cross the line a little bit. But the Rain Man part comes from home here, because I do a lot of domestic stuff since I'm not having to be on a job per se every day. I keep the house in order. We always had a clean house, but like I'll cook and wash dishes and that kind of stuff just to take the load off. But I was just like things. I like books, not sitting sideways on a desk. It's got to be, if there's a 90-degree angle at that corner, then the 90-degree angle on the book has to be matching that corner. You know what I mean? If it's an inch away from the side, it's got to be an inch away from the side. You've seen the movie. I'm that guy. If the towel is hanging over the rail in the bathroom on the thing, the guy. I'm not the guy who does the killing in the movie. I'm the guy on the Rain Man movie. Now they had some crazy people like that. But I can't have a crooked towel, man, hanging up. Are you kidding me?
So OCD.
Yeah. I can't do that. So you better straighten that towel up. So I got to go over there and straighten up the tile. That's where the Rain Man comes from. So it's a joke around my house. And then the shaman part, because I didn't just want to call myself Rain Man, because that could be the movie guy, that could be like a DJ. That's kind of what is that? And the shaman part came from one of my friends as a young kid and growing up through our 20s. I guess I used to just do stuff, and I don't know, but in his reflection, he said, "Man, you a shaman, dude. You a shaman." Because I'd just be doing some incredible stuff that I don't know I was doing, but apparently this has been a conversation with some people that that I'm close to, and so I just took Rain Man and shaman and stuck them together. I thought it had a little catch to it because it shows the wacky side of me, but it also shows the spiritual side of me, and just so like the wacky kind of spiritual guy. I just made a name out of it, and next thing you know, I became more comfortable with posting, and my content started developing, and I got decent at editing and just changing different things and presentations. I settled in on the shorts, like doing 1-minute videos. Nothing much longer than that. And so over time, it just develops. And now, like every day, even today, I'll put some more in draft and start tweaking them, start editing them, and then just determine what I'm going to put out. And I'll go to TikTok. TikTok gets everything because most of those people don't know me. And so most of them don't know me. And so, but they like it though. You know what I'm saying? TikTok likes my stuff. So I take my TikTok stuff, and then I determine if I'm like some of the stuff I put on LinkedIn, I'm like, I don't know if I'm put, but then I hear that voice like, go on and post it. You know what I mean? So I'll put some things on LinkedIn. I put some things on Facebook and YouTube. It's just a copy and paste at that point. And then Instagram. But TikTok is my main. They get everything, but everybody else gets, the watered down version, and that's pretty much how I do it.
I think I will tell you this. I saw the last few uploads that you had. Like you were walking on a trail or something. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah, yeah.
what it
They're
was,
all
but
praised on the trail.
yeah, but so those were actually pretty interesting. Were you doing that, or was somebody else recording for you?
Yeah, it's me. It's me. I've learned how to hold my arm at an angle that makes it look like somebody else is doing it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I will say, the content itself is definitely influential. You
Hey,
know.
I appreciate that. I keep hearing that. I'm like, I don't even know how I don't know. Yeah, but I hear that a lot, sir. But I appreciate that.
So see again, see that's that creative process that's happening unbeknownst to you, most likely is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do hear that a lot though. So that's what keeps me going actually. So they'll get one more video tomorrow because of you, Brother King.
Well, you need to keep that going though.
Yeah. Yeah, like I just have faith that it'll turn into something, you know. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is. Even if it doesn't, just hearing people like you say it's inspirational is good enough for me. Like literally.
So, how do you balance spiritual insight, social commentary, and personal storytelling in your content?
I've never really been one to think like everyone else, and I think that comes from observing people and their reactions. And I understand, in my mind at least, how media and the screens that we look at operate and algorithms. And because I don't think like everyone else, that allows my mind to creatively come up with another narrative and give people another outlook on a lot of things that they may see as one way. And I think that's the piece that you see as being inspirational because it's not really counteractive to what's the narrative, but it's more of another way maybe to look at some things to cause you to at least ask another question like, is this really the only reality that we can consider? Or is there something else that's underlying this that may be at play here? So that's pretty much how I attack all three. I don't want to land per se anywhere. If I'm going to do something on politics per se, I just dropped one on TikTok about that, specifically about the speech last night. To me, I don't weigh in on either side, whether I'm Democrat or Republican. I stay away from that, but I take the comedy in the situation and use that to say, hey, maybe we should not be taking this so seriously because maybe it kind of looks like they're kind of acting up there and they're not taking it as serious as I would if I was in that position. There's something going on. That's kind of how I attack it. You know, that's kind of how I look at things. I don't even when I'm talking like in religious, I stay out of the religion per se. I am very much, you know, I believe in God and that sort of thing, but I don't land. My upbringing has been Christian. If I had to like be forced to say who I am, that's what I would say. But um, I don't force that belief on anyone. I'll lean on all of them because I think they're all pretty much saying the same things religious wise. It's either you're going to be aligned with goodness or you're not. And I even try, I avoid the word try because when I try, that means I'm not doing it if I'm trying, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm messing it up now. So I intentionally focus on riding the line when I'm talking about religion in particular, riding the line of goodness versus being someone considered riding the line of evil, to attract a wider audience of amens, if you will. You know, to get people to see a bigger picture.
So, let's talk a little bit about your authorship and creative work. You've written 5 books. What themes connect your body of work?
My growth, it's all been aligned to my growth. I'm gonna show you. My first book, which is this one. I'm not advertising, but it's this one. I brought them so I could remember the titles because my titles tend to be long. You know what I mean? And you just say, "What 5 books have you written?" If you ask me to say all 5 titles, I would have to scratch my head. So the next book I write is going to have like a 1-word title. Yeah. Not these sentences and the subtitle. You know what I mean? So the first book was The Problem with Educating Black Kids. And that book literally came from the journaling. Remember, I told you that the principal was trying to figure out what we were doing in the classroom. And so the journaling that I did during that time ended up being 50 to 60 pages. So later on in life, I still had that 50 or 60 pages. I turned that into a book and titled it The Problem with Educating Black Kids. And it just walks people through the mindset that I had as a teacher. And then I have this book, Turnaround Principles for Turnaround Principals, which was written when I was a principal. And I save paper, I save documents, I save protocols and all that kind of stuff. And I put some narrative with it. I just kept journaling, and I wrote the principal book, which has a bunch of protocols and mindsets for administrators, basically. It could also be used as a training tool. And then I wrote a more comprehensive one that included both of those books, but also included my overall narrative of education and where we stand now, and probably some things that need to change in order to make it continue to be successful going forward, as well as including some things that operationally I did from the district level as assistant superintendent when I was over district operations. So those were my first 3 books. And it just went along with my development. And then as I came out with the Rain Man Shaman concept, I started thinking about just society and civilization and the whole planet, really, and how everything is set up and how we have to grind all the time. And sometimes we're grinding for things that are already here, but we depend on this capitalistic society to give us turnip greens that probably grow outside in the grass, and we just let it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So I start
thinking, you don't teach people how to grow them turnips now. They don't grow people.
I'm like, why am I paying for these turnip greens, man? I could probably go out here and, you know what I'm saying? Or even like clean water. Why can't I just go out here and get some water, man? They didn't dump stuff all in the water. So I just started thinking about these things. And so my next book was Awakening Protocols of Gaia, and Gaia being Earth. Just how to wake up and start seeing some of the stuff that we're doing that's not necessarily in the best interest of our climate or in the best interest of us in general. I think we could be more collaborative and more society-based. Not that I have a problem with capitalism per se, but it's about winners and losers in capitalism. We're all born here for free. So for somebody to have to struggle after being born for free is, at this stage of my life, is kind of
asinine.
Yeah. That part. And then my 5th book, I dove deep into some of the traditional ancient practices coming out of Egypt and Kemet, and looking at some of the things that have been revealed about what they do. The meditative work, for example, breath work, for example, controlling your breathing and trying to put yourself in meditative states. You still have people that sun gaze, grounding, putting your feet on the earth to heal yourself. And that's what the 5th book has been about. So it's followed my transition, to answer your question, that my 5 books have.
So which book was the hardest to write and why?
I think the first one. Because I'm self-published. In my earlier years, in my 20s, I attempted to write some poetry, which I still have, which I still think is good, but maybe I'll try that at one. Maybe I'll try that through a publishing company one day. But I attempted to publish a poetry book about 30 years ago or so, not to my success. So I said, if I attempt to publish any more books, I'm going to do them myself, which I did. And so my first book, I had to learn everything on how to publish, which platforms to go to, how to design covers, and what is my title going to be, and the editing piece, making sure that it was as clean as possible. Because when you write something, you tend to miss that misspelled word. And so just reading things 1,000 times and just getting it right. It's easier now because now you can cut and paste and do your spell checks. I guess I could have did that then, but it's just a little bit easier now. But that first book was the hardest, but once I learned the process, and because I've always been a collector of papers and you can save things on computers and all that stuff, everything else was just basically collecting the right information to put into chapters and organizing it in a way that's coherent.
So when we talked in booking the show, I mentioned to you that we do Black History 365. And I asked you, I said, who was the most influential person or persons in your life and career? You told me it was your mother and Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. Can you tell me, why is your mother one of the most influential figures in your life?
She molded me in a lot of ways that I haven't been able to understand until, I won't say until now, but it unfolds as time goes on. Like I said, that nurturing, that loving support that I always had from her, always being there, always being on my side, telling me what's right, telling me what's wrong. I think we all have those same things. At least I would hope that the majority of us have those same things from our mothers. And then her seeing in me my potential as an educator. She saw in me where I didn't see in myself. And at the levels that I was able to perform, it's pretty doggone good that she could see that. Because like I said, I was avoiding education. I was a firefighter, I was a fitness trainer. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I knew I didn't really want to work corporate, even though I had this econ degree. I wasn't really the business suit guy trying to go down there and, nah, bro. I mean, I put on suits though, I did. Even in the classroom, I put on suits. I wore a tie every day, but not the corporate thing. So in a lot of ways, she just, and then, she just showed me a lot of different things, including who I was in my early years as an educator. She just tapped into all my gifts and saw who I was before I could see who I was.
So what values did she instill that still guide your leadership today?
The self-worth piece and never giving up on yourself. She raised me to be very, I don't want to use the word competitive, but self-assured would probably be a better word. She would always reassure me that I was just as good as the next person, and to never shrink or fear the amount of shine that I could bring to a situation because of how it might be perceived, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
And so,
she put me in some tough situations. Like she had me speaking a lot. I was an introvert, but somehow I would end up in the doggone PTA meetings at the high school level. And I don't know how Douglas High School did it, but we had some packed I'm talking about in the doggone gym, dude. And they had people and these dignitaries sitting everywhere, and I'm at the doggone mic. I'm just having a reflective moment here.
Mm-hmm.
In the 9th grade, talking to probably 400 or 500 people, easy, including the mayor, Andrew Young in the crowd, like people like this, right? I'm sure it was a special PTA, but I will find myself in these speaking positions, and for some reason, I can't get this mic out my hand, So even she's seen the microphone in my hand from a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
I just had that epiphany, sitting right here, Brother King. Now I got to go change my mission statement.
That's just natural. That's just
Yeah.
natural.
Yeah, it is. So yeah.
How did her love shape your understanding of service and humanity?
Service and humanity. Well, the teaching part is easy because that's totally a service. And that in itself is a service to humanity. I think that the whole profession in of itself fits easily into that mold of service and humanity. That's really what the whole profession is about. That's what we sign up for at every level, even all the way up to the top level. Everybody says it's about the students and about the kids. So just raising a better society than we had from the previous generation is always the goal, and to prepare them for the future, as we like to say. So there is not a better career that's hands-on like an educator that provides service every day to humanity, Yeah, so just following in her footsteps has allowed me to do that.
Dr. Benjamin E. Mays shaped generations. What about his philosophy resonates most with you?
He has a saying, and I know that I'm going to jack it up, but you'll get the point. And the saying was, reach so high, reach for the stars, reach so high for the stars that even if you fail, you're still up with the moon or something like that. I jacked it up, but you get the gist of it. Just strive high. So either way, you still end up being a celestial being. So that always resonated with me. And his book, Born to Rebel, was one of the first books that I read as an autobiography, because I tend to read nonfiction. I don't read many autobiographies, but that's one of the ones that I really enjoyed before being an educator, and that really inspired me. Just reading his life story and how he grew up and how he managed things and became president at Morehouse, and he was integral in the Atlanta School Board and just an overall educator, influenced Dr. Martin Luther King. And even today, I live on this street, but the street that's adjoined to it is Dr. Benjamin E. Mays Drive in Atlanta. So I drive on that road every day just to leave my house. So very influential. Just ironic that I live off the street named after him. Yeah.
So, last question.
Mm-hmm.
How has Mays' belief in purpose, dignity, and education influenced your career?
Some people just have a legacy that, in my mind, it can't be approached. I would like to think that maybe one day I will have a legacy such as that. But his name still rings and lingers today at Morehouse College in particular as one of the great presidents. It still lingers in the Atlanta public school system as one of the great leaders in the school board. And just the legacy itself is something that's beyond impressive. So when I think about my own legacy, if I can just have an inkling of that with purpose, and I'm sure he served his purpose. Otherwise, his legacy wouldn't be as strong as it is now. But to find my purpose and be able to leave a legacy like that is inspiring for me after reading his book and reading how he grew up. And that's really what inspires me to be a great educator. It's kind of transitioning now because he was in the educational space, and I'm kind of leaning towards another space now, even though I still do some educational things. But that certainly has been the case with my upbringing.
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement you'd like to leave with our audience? Tell them how they can connect with you via your social media, your website, all of those good things.
Okay. Words of wisdom. I'll tell you exactly at my 55th birthday party, which was a couple years ago. They asked me the same thing. My friends put me on the spot. I had a little small gathering here at my house. They said, give us some words of wisdom, like I'm some old man or something. But so I paused, and and because I'm in the situation that I'm in, I'm able to think. But my words to them was, don't get so caught up in everyday life that you don't have time to sit down and discover who you are and realize the greatness that's within you, and find a way to use your talents for purpose to make this world a better place, and build a relationship with yourself, get to know yourself with less focus on what we're seeing from everyone else around us, and just do your best to contribute to the world to make it better, whatever that means to you. And if at all possible, find time away from the grind if you were able to do that at some time in your life before it gets too late. And those were the words that I left with them. And so those are my words. Sometimes we get so occupied and preoccupied with everything else, and what's going on over here and what's going on over here, and what she said and what he said, and what the right said, what the left said, and what they doing over here and what's going on. And we forget just to, just chill out, have some quiet time, sit with your dog and just be quiet. Or your cat, or go outside on the porch and just take a breather. It just gets a little hectic. That's it. And then the other piece, you say, the contact information. So Accuratics, you see that down on the screen there. Accuratics@outlook.com. Accuratics@outlook.com. That is my email address. Or you can take my name without the whole Andre, use the middle initial only, Kwame A. Carr, KwameACarr@gmail.com. Those are two email addresses. And then you can find me. I typically do read my comments on my social media. So you can see me there. I've been working on a website, but Brother King, I changed my mission and my vision so much, man. I go from math to speaking. I'm on this thing, so I don't have a website. I'm glad I don't, because I have to keep changing my website. But I'm going to get a website once I finalize what exactly Accuratics is. Still a work in progress, but we're getting there. I've been working on it hard for good 2 years now, I guess. It took me a year to kind of figure out that I wanted to record and make videos and be a content creator. But those are my best ways. And then I get my cell number out. It's 404 247 8517. 404 247 8517. That's my my cell phone number. Accuratics at outlook.com, Kwame A. Carr at gmail.com, or any of my social medias.
Well, before I close, I just want to say that this was definitely worth the wait, and I'm glad that we got you on the show. And I would definitely love for you to come back at another time, especially if you are available, because I'm very sure that, there's been lots and lots of impact from the words, that not only have you left here in the closing, but as we were going through the show, this was a really good interview, and I want to thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you, Brother King. I appreciate you.
And for those of you that are watching on all of our channels, especially our YouTube channels, I would appreciate the support if you have not subscribed and enabled all notifications. If you would please go through, go on the channel and subscribe and enable the notifications and follow us for each and every show that we record. And you are also able to go back and watch all of the previous shows and get all of the knowledge and wisdom that our guests have left for you. So in closing, I would love to, just do this so that maybe make sure that you are listening as well as our audience, is that Kwame, your journey is a testament to what happens when purpose meets preparation, when service meets spirit, and when a leader refuses to shrink in the face of responsibility. From the classroom to the superintendent's office, from author to entrepreneur, from content creator to spiritual guide, you have shown that reinvention is not only possible, it is necessary. Your mother's love, Benjamin E. Mays' wisdom, and your own unshakable commitment to growth have shaped a life that continues to uplift others. Tonight, you reminded us that leadership is not a title, it's a calling. And you've answered that call with courage, clarity, and conviction. Thank you for sharing your truth. Thank you for your service. And thank you for continuing to build a better world, one awakened soul at a time. This has been America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King. Good night, family. And we will see you guys tomorrow night for another